Okay, folks, let's get moving along here. So we've talked about understanding maps and we've talked about contour lines and elevation and how important it is to have a foundational understanding of that to eventually move into to be able to look and interpret imagery in a way that helps you plan your hunts. So let's move on to this step three here, the imagery and mapping tools, and then throughout the rest of this section, we'll talk about terrain and forest cover, as well as assessing access, and we'll do a bit of flipping between the imagery tools to start to better understand the assessing terrain and forest cover. So we'll get started getting into these actual e-scouting techniques, which I think is what you're looking for. So let's get into it. So there's a number of great tools that are available to us to see the landscape and the terrain from our phone or computer at home. And of course, that's really what the e-scouting piece is about: is being able to look at this country and terrain to get to daydream about these trips ahead of time, but also put the effort into plan stuff so that we can eventually have a successful outcome on a hunt. Um, Probably the foundational tool that you're probably familiar with is Google Earth. This was sort of the first application that came to the forefront that really put together high resolution images of the earth and of the different landscapes around the world, and so it's super interesting. You can look at the deserts and the Sahara, but for me, I spent a lot of time, I have spent countless hours on Google Earth exploring BC, assessing access, and planning my hunts. Now, it's definitely still a great tool. It's got lots of great functionality. One, it's got great images. That's number one. It's got the ability to measure distance or to plan routes. It's also got the ability to import different files that you can then look at. I think they're called KMZ files, where you can import a file and then see it as a layer on Google Earth. So it's got lots of functionality and tools. It's got a good search function. You can drop waypoints. I typically use Google Earth for sort of a course uh, e-scouting effort, and I often use it to say draw a map of an area, or I wouldn't say draw a map. I would say download a map of an area that may have some waypoints and camp locations, and share that with a group of hunters. Um, and so that's probably the main function for me, and I'll show you how to do that because I think it's sort of a handy thing to basically print maps off it or share maps with folks of the digital imagery of the area. This next one, this is Fat Maps, and Fat Maps is a great tool for doing a finer course of imagery viewing. So what I like about this application, that they've got an exceptional data set that provide that make up the base layer of mapping, and what I use it for is really trying to look at my terrain assessment, forest cover, and route finding are the three things. It's also got a fair bit of information and a few layers that I'll walk you through. This Fat Maps account, there are some free layers. There's some free access to this Fat Maps, but there is also a paid subscription, which some people choose to use because you can actually use this as part of your navigation tool. Like you can actually plot out your routes and drop waypoints and share waypoints. But it's a paid service to get that level of service and those access to those maps when you're offline. Um, when you're online, you have access to the base maps, which for free, at least I do right now. So eventually, I think they want to go to a full paid subscription. But for now, it's a great tool. Everything you can do on here, you can also do on Google Earth for free. So this is just a nice to have, and I'll use it a little bit as we talk about terrain assessment, forest cover assessment. The next one, and this is kind of the where you get everything all in one. It's the iHunter app. Now this is a mix of some of it's paid subscription, some of it's free access, and then there's enhancements that you can buy. But I find this extremely good value for what I do in terms of both my e-scouting efforts as well as my in the field navigation This tool here gives you a spectrum of mapping tools. Lots of You can add in lots of layers, which I'll talk about in terms of mapping layers. It's got great tool function for measuring distances, and then all of that information, all of can be translated into your phone so that you have access to it while in the field, offline. You have your maps and all that data you might have collected or researched is all available in the field. And the last piece of this is it does serve as a really good sort of a GPS functionality. So if you can either have a GPS unit to navigate in the woods, but you can also use your phone with a GPS uh, application downloaded onto your phone. This is a tool for that. For me, is that I can drop waypoints, I can navigate back to those waypoints, I can share those waypoints with other hunters. So this is an awesome tool. So we'll kind of we'll talk about some of those concepts of imagery assessment and terrain assessment, and then we'll get into using this tool to both plan your hunts and navigate on your hunts, and that'll be another sort of section after this. All right, so we'll carry on here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the iHunter app. Now, this application is really really powerful, and it does a couple of things really well. And I actually could spend, and I will eventually do a whole webinar class or online course on how to get the most out of the iHunter app. But I'm going to show you a couple of key layers that we need to bring into this larger conversation around eScouting that you can access from the iHunter app. So let's start here. So what's first thing that's cool about this app is that it's both the mapping and the tools are available on your handheld device, like your smartphone, and they can also be available on the desktop. And the two, and if you have an account, they're linked, so you can any information that you store in your phone would then be available when you go back home and open up your laptop, or vice versa. If you do some scouting on your laptop and drop some waypoints, when you go into the field, you'll have the waypoints and mapping available on your cell phone. So that's the first thing that's really cool about it. So this is iHunter. You'll be able to find it. It's a very affordable app. I think some of the base layers are free, and then you add different layers, and there's more value with the different layers that you add. So let's just have a little look at the desktop application. So again, this is a tool for both seeing mapping and imagery of British Columbia in our case. It's also got tools to make your phone kind of a GPS, a navigation device, and somewhere to store waypoints and routes as well. So in addition to that, this app also provides information on the hunting regulations in a specific area. So really quite powerful tool. So let's just start with, again, similar to the other apps, you can just scroll into the area that you plan to hunt. We'll go back into that zone around here where we were just on the side of Manning Park. First thing that makes this app cool is you can double click anywhere on any area, and it should provide. There we go. That pops up there. Once you click on it, you have the option of dropping a waypoint. You can name the waypoint, but we're not gonna do that right just yet. But what I do think is cool is you can click on the management unit, and it'll give you the regulations in an area. So you get a rundown of all the regs, and so mule deer season is September 10th to the 30th for 4-point bucks, and any buck after October in this area. So that's pretty cool. But what I want to talk more about right now is how powerful of a tool it is for doing that e-scouting component we've been talking about. So I'm going to scroll back into looking for Big Buck Mountain again. There it is there. So the first thing that's available to us on this application is we've got several different layers of mapping available to us on just one click. So this is the road layer. You can see the Crow's Nest Highway, which is labeled. It's got peaks and stuff labeled. It's got the park boundary. I can click on satellite, and I can access Google satellite imagery with one click. So that gives me, so we're looking back at imagery we've already looked at, but already you can see that if you were to compare the satellite imagery from one data set to another, this is actually pretty darn good. This Google information. Yeah, it's very good actually. And it just depends. Like, you'll find that some mapping is better than others. Like, and for some areas, the Google data set is good or better as the fat maps. And then other areas where the fat map is far superior than the Google data set. It seems like the Google mapping it seems to be improving quite quickly in recent years, for sure. Now there's other map sets available to you. There's the Apple map set that's available to you. Again, you can see slight variation in the quality of the imagery, and again, like this is maybe even a little bit improved. This might be a little bit older mapping because if you look at just how raw this landscape looks, and if you click back to the Google Earth mapping, it almost looks like this may have had a little bit of time to green up or to heal a bit since the last. Yeah, interesting, hey? Oh, that might be newer. Hard to say. Anyways, regardless, pretty interesting to see that the map. So you have the options of just sort of looking for the best map set. There's also hybrids where it just gives you both the roads and the imagery. Same for Google; it's got a hybrid setting as well. So, anyway, so between the two layers here and the fat maps layers, you can find the best map set for that eScouting component, particularly that effort of trying to do the sort of finer scale assessment of the forest cover and or the ground cover and the different types of ecosystems that you're looking for. All right, so that's the first thing you can find out. The next thing that's super powerful about this, I'm going to go with the best one that we had, which I think was I believe it was this one. I think it was that was looking pretty good. All right, so this is looking at our area here. Okay, so we have a bunch of different layers that you can add to the map here. So there's layers available to us here. Crown land, private land, and you can put the parks on or off. So the one thing about the layers is as you lay them on, you can see how it kind of adds a bit of cloudiness to just a bit of shading. So if you pop it off, you can get a better look in here at the terrain. But when you're doing that sort of more coarse screen, you probably want to have the parks on there for you. This one here, this is probably the most important one. See the purple haze here? This is showing crown land. And the super important part about crown land layers is it's showing us where you can hunt. So anywhere on crown land, for the most part, you can hunt provided you're not in a no shooting area. So knowing exactly where those crown land zones are is critically important. Now, if I just take us over here, you can see that there's if you scroll in here, this is all crown land here. It's got that purple haze, but then in here, this is all private land. So these are all private land chunks. And if you were to click on here, it'll actually tell you that its ownership is private. If you click over here, it'll tell you that ownership is for crown land. So super powerful tool. And if you are, if you're trying to well, first of all, assess whether you can legally hunt there, having access to this layer is critical. So I believe this is a paid for subscription to add that private land layer and to have it at sort of just be able to toggle it on and off. Super key. Now, the other thing that's kind of cool down here is a lot of places in BC, the road access. So these are a whole bunch of little, like what appear to be little cabin lots. Now, it's the road access to these cabin lots appears to be crown land or public land. So this road is probably maintained by the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. So it's going to be bordered on either side by private land. But you can see where this road kind of goes and nips out and does a turnaround here. It actually turns around on crown land. So if I click here, I can see that it says it's crown land. Okay, that's cool. So if I was trying to access from the highway and I'm trying to eScout to find access up the hillside, often on either side of a highway will be private land the length of the highway, but there'll be occasionally roads going off, like this one, that might give you access to an area where it pops onto crown land. And in this case, you could park your vehicle on this bend of the road here somewhere, provided it's safe, and then you could take off hunting. Now, granted, there looks like there's other access roads like this one here that get you well up into the crown land, but there's a lot of cases where you'll be looking for that break in private land to provide access, and that's what this layer is super important for. We'll just take a quick look for a better example of that. I'll just scroll out a little bit and look for that continuous land that sort of borders on either side. Here's another example right in here where you've got a road access that comes through. There's private land parcels on either side of the road here, so that's private. But the roadway, you can tell by the outline of the purple here that it's actually crown. It's a crown road. You can drive down the road. You just can't go on either side of the highway. It goes through a series of lots, and then eventually you see the road clear those private property lots, and now you're into crown land. So it's just good to have that verification, that knowledge, to be certain that you can legally, park your vehicle on the side of the road and then take advantage of walking up this hill. Again, looks like there's all kinds of alternatives for getting into the backcountry, but that's probably one of the most powerful tools of the iHunter app, and why it's super important for eScouting, because if you're looking for access, having that private land layer is key. All right. Couple other tools that I really appreciate about iHunter. I'm going to take this crown land layer off here. I am going to just close this out for now. And I'm going to use the draw and measure tool. So this tool here is super cool because I can assess how far it is. So we talked about hunting from, I believe, this peak here. And we talked about running along this ridge. If you wanted to know how long that ridge is, or that route that you'd picked, you just draw it with the drawing tool, and it gives you this basically this measurement of in this case it's 7 kilometers. But a lot of times, like I've even used this very specifically. I'll give you a great example of how I've used it. If I've been like, say I'm go back towards I believe we decided that this is Big Buck Mountain here. So if we're sitting on our glass and knob right here and we see animals over here, I can quickly take out my iHunter tool and I can say, okay, how far is it to there? If I'm looking across the valley, I see a couple of deer on this ridge. Okay, I'm like 2.7 kilometers away. I can then measure, well, if I'm going to go hike after them, this is my route up here. Gonna kind of get on top of the ridge and it's where I can see down on them. So my total hike is 3 kilometers. Probably take me an hour to get there. Also looking at some pretty good going there. So yeah, super cool tool. Also, like I've even used it as far as like looking down maybe 300-400 yards away, and maybe I'm looking at an animal that's 300 yards away, and maybe it's a makeable shot distance. So super powerful tool. Okay, the last thing I really wanted to show you, and this is where it gets kind of neat, and why this is so important to have this tool, is the I'll show you here. The next thing is to add. There's cool things in here. There's also wildfires, so you can actually see where wildfires were in the past 5 years or so, which is a great thing if you add those layers in, and then you can see where there might be a good place to go hunt if you're looking to hunt mule deer or moose, or depending, because all those forest fire areas recover and produce a lot of vegetation for the critters you might be looking for. All right, I'm just going to do a little bit deeper dive into the reason why I use iHunter and what it, when you start pulling things together, it's the one place you can kind of do everything that we've talked about so far. So let's look at I've dropped a few waypoints in here in my hunt planning. I've got our parking zone. I've got our first sort of proposed glassing spot, we're going to pretend that we spotted a big buck over here, and we've got our camping spot mixed up, marked out here. And I've even got a little spot above here where we saw a goat too. So let's first of all, like, the key coming back to this, where we started out, was being able to um, assess like the topography of an area, the how steep an area is, and the best tool for that is using contour lines to show the steepness of an area. So we've got the missing piece of information that we've had when looking at all these beautiful images is just knowing, in fact, how steep things are. So the trick here, what's great about iHunter, is you can actually click on settings and you can add the GeoGratis Topo series as an overlay over top of the imagery. So in doing that, we all of a sudden, it gets a little more complicated. It's not, but I can also see a super important bit of information here that'll help me better understand how this terrain works. So let's specifically look at this zone between where we parked the vehicle and where camp is up here, or our destination, which is I think that's Big Buck Mountain, and our Glass and Knob. And we have looked at the different areas. You can see in here the contour lines are closer together, and in some areas they're wider apart. And those wider apart areas are the areas that I want to target for my climbing routes. I think if you remember here, I had sort of identified that just looking at this that this ridge here is a bit more open, as opposed to this ridge here. It's a little more closed in, but on the canopy. My plan was to park on this right here and then work my way around and then climb up this ridge. And I can tell by looking at this that this is actually a fairly mellow ridge, and it's probably suitable for hiking up. And if I wanted to get into a bit deeper, I can tell that I'm going to go from 1,600 vertical meters here. You can see 1,600 vertical meters up to 2,000 vertical meters. So I know that I know two things. One, I know is I can take my draw and I can draw my map out, and I can climb up here. I'm going to get on that ridge, and I'm going to poke to Big Buck Mountain. It's only 735 meters. It's not super far. And I'm going to climb up approximately 400 meters over that distance. So and if for most of us, you'll eventually should know comfortably like how much you can climb. Like, so say for example, you do the grouse grind, and if you know how fast you can climb the grouse grind, and I think you gain about 1,000 vertical meters on that hike, or maybe a little bit less, and it takes you an hour and a half, then you can kind of do some math. And for me, I know that I can climb about, with a pack on, I can climb 300 vertical meters in an hour relatively comfortably on a decent route or trail. So for this route here, if I had a good trail, it would take me about an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour, maybe an hour and a half. If I'm pushing through brush and kind of finding my way as I go, it's probably closer to 2 or 3 hours, depending on how thick it is going through there. If it's a trail up there, probably an hour and a half to gain that 400 vertical meters, or maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours for me. That's just going steady with a pack on. If I was just running up the hill like I was doing the grouse grind with this pair of sneakers on and a water bottle, probably quite a bit less. But cool. Okay, so that's a reference point, and that's probably something you can work on and go practice. I encourage you to get out with your pack on, with your equivalent of your hiking kit or your hunting kit, like your heavy boots, your backpack with 60 pounds in it. Obviously, don't bring your firearm if you're going to go climb up the grouse grind, but it's good to do any number of those vertical hikes to test yourself out and see what you can actually do, and then you can measure out how much elevation gain and distance using these tools to then really get a fair estimate of what it's going to take to do those hunts. All right. So that's a key tool here. Let's just cruise around here, and we can kind of really see how powerful this map layer is. And let's go over. We're going to go back over to that steep, tight spot, And you can kind of see here, you can really see like where these contour lines are getting closer together. And I can tell that this is 1,800 meters and it goes up to 2,200 meters here, it looks like, at the peak. And that's a 400 vertical meter gain over a fairly short distance here. So we'll just, again, so that distance is, it's only a couple hundred, 300 meters, but you're gaining almost the same. It's 400 meters over 400 meters over a 400 meters, sorry, over of elevation over 400 meters of distance. So that would actually turn out, I believe, to a 45-degree slope, if which is quite steep and very difficult to manage. So, yeah, so pretty cool. All right, so you're starting to see what I'm getting at here as far as picking those routes. That would be an impossible route, whereas over on this side here, the hill, it might be a little more gentle. Try and get up and down this ridge. You can see we've spotted a goat here. I put that goat icon in there because you can really see that this is rocky, sort of more goat-like terrain with cliffs and steep slopes, and definitely not hiker friendly. So really trying to get you to key in on seeing that and those impossible routes. All right. We'll just zip out here. So I'll cancel that out. So again, the key functions in this application here is we have this ability to layer on the topographic maps, which definitely helps see stuff. And then we've got the different options for mapping. There's also one more tool here I can show you. This is the Google Terrain Maps, which I'll just go back up here. So it's just a different way of accessing topographic maps. I struggle with these ones a little bit because, well, it's actually pretty good. You can really start to see. Let's see if it catches up with us here. Maybe it's just a bit too fine, but okay, you can see those contour lines again starting to tell us. This has got a couple of things that it's showing you the undulations with some shading in the terrain. Plus, you've got the added benefit of the contour lines that are telling us information, and so you can kind of start to see what we know that this is a 1/1. So we know that this is a 45-degree slope here, so you can start to interpret when you're looking at topographic lines how close they are together. You can start to interpret when those topographic lines are too close together to walk up. So it's an important skill to be able to identify that. All right, so I'm going to get off this, and I'm going to move back to the slideshow, and we're going to talk about some key features that we're going to be looking at, and we'll probably be flipping back and forth to the different mapping softwares and images to help better understand them. All right, let's get there.